So, real quick on the side note of what we're discussing here, because I'm not really familiar with reshoring, would that roll into sort of what you were saying there?
A little bit. So
Oh,
reshoring is actually kind of interesting because just real simple terms, reshoring means that if I was sourcing a product from a foreign country, reshore means I bring it back to the United States. Nearshoring means I'm moving it back close to the United States, but I'm probably sourcing it in Canada or Mexico. You've also even heard terms like friendshoring, right? Friendshoring means I move it to India because they're a friend, they're an ally, and we're not going to have a trade war with India, and so that's friendshoring. What the Trump administration is trying to do with tariffs, and the Biden administration also continued the prior Trump efforts to reshore. They continued those policies, and so it's not just one administration, but they're trying to get companies to decide that, hey, because of trade war risk, what we went through in 2021 and 2022 with the global supply chain crisis coming out of COVID, hey, I'm done. I'm tired of being out of stock. I'm tired of my suppliers saying they can't fulfill my orders. So I'm going to go ahead and bring production back domestically to the US. That's
sure.
reshoring. And the whole objective of these tariffs right now, to be honest with you, there's a lot of banter about stopping fentanyl and things like that. That can be done in different ways. But what this is really about is reshoring into the United States and building manufacturing capacity here. And I know this is maybe a different topic for a different day, but right now, since 2019, if you look at the volume of construction activity building manufacturing facilities in the United States, we're up 195% from where we were in 2019. We're growing. Yeah, we're building out right now in the US at the rate of about $237 billion a year in brand new manufacturing capacity. Just to compare that, if you adjust for differences in currency, India is building at about a 70 billion a year rate. Mexico's building at about a $74 billion a year rate. The US is building at 4 times the rate of both of those countries. So we're doubling manufacturing capacity with those two countries combined. So and that build out has been running at that pace now for about 2 years. The Trump administration is trying to accelerate that. They want to see more of that sourcing taking place, and that's the whole reshoring trend.
And that can be sped up with the use of tariffs. Is that what we're looking at now? Is they want to be reshoring, bringing back manufacturing to, internally within the United States. And as you said, it's been happening now for the last 6 years at a higher level, but by adding the tariffs on might speed up that process enough to where it's happening more regularly and getting finished and manufacturing starts up sooner than later on American shores.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is a little more complex, but
Yeah.
we have that. That's okay. No, but you're right on. Because we had prior to this what we call the China plus one strategy. So
Okay.
most companies that were inbounding or they were sourcing products elsewhere in the world, they knew that China was a primary target for a lot of the tariff activity, whether it was Trump, Biden, Obama, it doesn't matter. And so what they did is they said, okay, well, I'm going to have China as a sourcing partner, but then I want a plus one. I want to go to Vietnam. I want to go to Malaysia, Singapore, South Korea, Taiwan, somebody else sourcing the same exact product, but I just want options. So that's what we did. We saw from 2021 to about 2023. Today, they're talking about China plus X. And that's sort of the new term. It's been coined just this year. We're starting to hear it bantered around a bit. So now what I might do is if I'm sourcing a product, I may be sourcing it from China and Vietnam, but I'm also going to get some from Mexico, and I'm also going to reshore and get some domestically out of the United States. So I'm really spreading that sourcing risk around.
Mhm.
And then what I'll do is sit and try to optimize my total landed cost by getting, 5% from China, maybe 10% from Vietnam, and I'm going to get 40% from Mexico, and then maybe 30% from the US. And so, they have those options open to them all the time. And it sounds more complex, but AI and other technologies make it so much easier than it was maybe 10 years ago. And so we're kind of moving into this China plus X global sourcing and diversification sort of strategy, and that kind of a trend or that kind of a phase. And so part of that is, again, reshoring and have a percentage here that allows you to, avoid tariffs if you want in the US, but if you're also selling to Chinese customers, maybe you're producing those products in China, you know?
Okay. Which makes a lot of sense because, as you said, your diversification of your production, you could be selling manufacturing products in the US, selling US, manufacturing products in China, selling in China, or if you do have to import into the United States particular products for assembly, then it's not going to be as much as if you had to bring the whole widget from China into the US because you're only bringing in one portion of that product.
That's right. That's right. And I may be using my China production to feed and source into Europe and India and other places. So anyone that doesn't have a tariff applied, or where I'm competitive, at least in those markets. So
I mean, that leads us into one area that a question further down the page that I was going to be asking you. But, I know of companies in the United States, they say they're made in America, which, they're assembled in America, and they do have some of their, um, let's say, components for the overall product created in United States manufacturing. But they also rely on overseas components that they can't get here for a decent cost. So they might be bringing things in from China, or as you said, Vietnam or other international companies. Is this one reason for the strategy that you just mentioned so that the impacts of tariffs on these operations and their pricing isn't as impacted because, now they could say, we're made in America because 70% of it's coming in, but that other 30% isn't taking as much of a hit. Is that why they'd be diversifying in the manner you said, like China plus X?
to get around tariffs, they absolutely would. So that's why we saw a lot of expansion into Vietnam, because that was a way to avoid Chinese tariffs. And a lot of the expansion and investment in Vietnam was actually coming from Chinese companies that were moving that investment over to try and avoid tariffs. Now, again, the administration, and it doesn't matter whether it's this administration or the next one, they're getting smart enough to know how to try and head some of that off. And that's why on April 2nd, they're talking about more tariffs. They're going to focus it really on what they call retaliatory tariffs. And I'm kind of jumping subjects here just a little bit, but
Mhm.
it's all connected. Uh, so if a country is applying a tariff to us today of 25%, April 2nd, supposedly there's going to be new tariffs applied to products going to their country or coming in from their country of about the same amount. That's the retaliatory side of things. But it's also to try and create some balances and to account for and to collect on some of those countries that are being used as a hedge against like a China tariff, right? So it may go after Vietnam, knowing that people are using it as a workaround to get away from the China tariff. And so there's a lot going on there, I think, in trying to collect. That's one of the reasons why Mexico got hit with a 25% tariff, was because we saw so many Chinese companies opening up manufacturing facilities in Mexico, and it was primarily designed to try and get around that tariff risk and trade war risk and other things that may go on between the United States and China. So it is a strategy. You're exactly right. It is a strategy that's been employed and used for many years now. But we're going to be clamping down and tightening down on some of those workarounds. So
Yeah.